Hi everyone and welcome back to part 26. So in this video we are going to discuss this flow. Okay, we are going to complete friend request feature. So here what we need is, as you can see in this diagram, first of all we'll be creating these three CRUD APIs, okay, in order to fetch the list of all users from our database. Okay, similarly we'll be fetching a list of all our friends, okay, and all of the friend requests that we have currently. Okay, now, from the list of general users, we'll be able to send friend request, okay? And whenever we basically emit this event from our client side, then a new friend request will be created on our backend and a notification will be sent to the receiver, okay? And to the sender, we'll send an acknowledgement, okay, that your request has been delivered successfully. Now, there will be two options after that. The end user can actually accept that request or deny. After the request is accepted, okay, we'll be able to basically start communicating with our users. So that's the flow that we are going to build. Okay, with that understanding, let's now actually switch to our backend, okay, so that we can start adding these CRUD operations, okay, that we'll need. So here I am on my server, okay. So first of all, as usual, I'm going to close all of my open editors and collapse this folders. Now, first thing that I want to do here is to just go inside this controllers and then user controller. As you can see in the last video, we discussed about this get users endpoint, okay, which is basically fetching list of all users and removing ourselves, okay, and all of our current friends from this list, okay. Now, after this, similarly, we are going to create two other endpoints like we discussed, okay. So the first one will be get friends. This endpoint is basically going to give us list of all the users who are our friends, okay. So here I'll just write async, then these three request, response and next, okay, which will get as an argument. We can simply get it by doing a simple query on our users collection, okay. So if you remember from our last video, we added this field here with this name of friends, okay. So this is going to be an array, or you can say list, containing the reference to all of our friends. So we can just make use of this collection, okay, and do this query find by id. Within this request there is going to be this user property which is going to come from the previous middleware, since this is going to be a protected request, okay. So that is why when a request comes into our server, in order to fetch the list of our friends for a particular user, then we'll first have to run this controller, which I have already shown you in the previous video as well. This is by the name of protect, okay. Let me just recap that quickly. So the request will first go through this controller, okay, and here we'll check if there is a token inside headers, and then we'll also verify, okay. After decoding that, we'll just fetch the user's detail, and that will be passed to the next middleware onto this request object. I hope that is clear. So that is why we are able to get this user on this request object, and we are also able to get this id property here. Now the next thing that I will do here is I'll populate this field that we want here, friends, okay. Because if you go to users model, okay, let's revisit that. So inside users model, you can see here we have mentioned that this friends array is going to store only the object id, okay, of our friends, not their complete information like their first name, last name. So this is just going to be a reference, okay, to this, to one of the users in our database. And in order to basically populate that, we'll have to change this populate method here. And from this friends, okay, we only want certain properties, or we'll need their underscore id property, okay. Then we'll also need their first name, last name, okay. That is all we need for this request, okay. Later on we'll also add their avatar or image, okay. So I'll just come back here and make some changes in future. For now, we are just going to send this friends array that we get here to our front end, okay. So I'll just send this response back to our client. I'll set the status code to 200. Then we'll add this json data, okay. As usual, we'll send this status, okay, and here the value of this is going to be success. in place of data I'll just send this friends, okay, and for the message part I'll just write friends found successfully. So I hope that is very clear, okay. Similarly we'll actually add another middleware here, okay. So let's create that, and that will be for friend request. Okay, so let's actually see how we can do that. So here I'll just name it get request, okay, or in order to make it much more clear you can just write get friend request, okay, whatever you prefer. Then as usual we'll be getting these arguments request response next here. Now let's actually write the logic to fetch all of the requests. So we can just simply do that by writing this query. Let me show it to you. So as you remember we have created friend request model here, okay, in the last video. So we have this friend request model, okay, and we can actually use it to get all of the friend requests that a user currently has, okay. So this is auto imported here, make sure you also do that, okay, otherwise you will get an error while running this endpoint. So after importing this we just have to run a find query on it, okay. For the filtering criteria, as you remember we have this property name here which is called recipient, okay. So let's say I am a user, okay, I am user A and I am sending a request to the backend in order to fetch all of the friend requests that I have received. So what I am going to do, I am going to look up into this collection, okay, friend request, then I'll search all of the records in which I am the recipient, okay. So that is why we are going to place that condition here, okay. So I'll be writing this here recipient, okay, like this, and its value should be equal to request.user._id. Again we are able to get users id like this because this is going to be a protected request. Here also we are going to populate a field, okay. So we'll populate this other field that we have here which is called sender, because this is storing reference to the user who has sent us a friend request. So I'm sure you must have used this feature in Facebook, okay. So whenever you receive a friend request we will be showing who has sent you that request, okay. Then only we can accept that or take action on it, okay. So here I'll be just populating this field sender, okay. Then we can just select properties that we want from it, okay. So I'll be just mentioning, we have to mention it here, okay, like this, not outside. So I'm going to remove from here, okay. And I'll write underscore id first name and last name, okay. So now we are done with these two CRUD operations. Only thing that we have to do here is to just send the response back to the client. So I'm just going to copy this from here, okay, and then I'll just paste and update that. So this is going to be modified to friend request found successfully, and here it will be request in place of friends, okay. That is it. Now we just need to set up route for these two endpoints that we just created, okay. So I'll go inside this routes folder, okay, then inside this user.js file we'll be creating two other endpoints here. So I'll just duplicate this line, okay, and I'm also going to actually change the method here, because as the name suggests we are actually requesting for some kind of data, okay. So this is going to be a get request. I'm just following the REST convention. If you don't know what that is you can just search for it on Google, and by the way it's very simple. I'll be discussing this in a future project, okay. So here we have three different requests, okay. I'm just going to modify these, okay, slightly. So the second one is going to be get friends, like this, okay. Then here I'll just update this controller to get friends, like this. Similarly the next one will be get friend requests, okay, and this controller will be updated to get friend request or get request, okay, like this. So now we are done with the changes that we had to make on our server side. We'll be actually also doing something like we'll be listening for the disconnect event, okay, inside this socket IO, okay, and then we'll be basically storing if the user is connected in real time or not, okay. So that will help us to basically display whether a user is online or not. Okay, so I hope that is very clear. Okay, so now we can actually move to our client side and make some changes so that we can start sending and receiving friend requests. So now we need to first of all start by adding a button here. Okay, in this line where you can see chats. Okay, so we'll be adding a button here beside this stories icon. Okay, so that will be basically used for opening up the dialog box where we'll be able to see three tabs: one for all the users, okay, one for the friend request, okay, and the third one is for friends. So let's now actually start implementing this. So first of all, you need to move inside your front-end directory. Okay, so open up this project and go inside the source folder. First thing that we'll need here is to move inside this pages folder, then dashboard. Here you can see we have this chats.js. Okay, and if you just scroll down, okay, just a little bit, you can see we have this typography that in this line we want to place one more icon button. Okay, just like we have this circle dashed. Okay, similarly we want one more icon button here, and here we'll just use another icon that will be users. Okay, so I'm just going to get it auto imported from phosphor react library. So let's just use this users icon. Okay, I'm just going to save it and let's see what changes we get on our screen. So after this code is compiled, okay, if you go back, you can see we have this icon button, but it's not like we wanted. Okay, we want to group these two icon buttons together and that will be inside a row. So that is actually very simple. So let's finish that quickly. We'll be using this stack component and we have used this several times before. Okay, so I'm just going to directly write and tell in short what we are going to do here. So the first thing that we need here is direction. Okay, obviously as you can see we're going to keep it to row. Okay, because we want these two items to be aligned horizontally. Okay, and for this property align items, we'll be setting it to center. Let's also provide some spacing here. Okay, one means 8 pixels. Okay, now I'm just going to again format it and then I'll be adding a on click event listener here. Okay, so here we can just basically execute some kind of logic. Okay, so for that I'm using this arrow function here. So what we'll be doing here is we'll be basically calling handle open dialog. Let me just write it, then we'll create it. Okay, and you'll understand why we are doing this. So here we'll be managing a local state. Okay, that will be for the dialog box that we want to open and close. Okay, so since you must have done this several times. Okay, we have discussed this many times in this project as well. So let me just write that quickly. Here I'll just write open dialog. Okay, and set open dialog. For now we'll just set its initial state to false. Okay, you can just import this use state from react library like this. Okay, then we can just create handler functions here. Let me do that very quickly. So the first one will be handle close dialog. Okay, so here we can just directly write this set open dialog, and as you can see by its name it is going to be used to close the dialog box. So we'll just update the property of this open dialog to false. Okay, similarly we can just create one for the opening. Okay, so if you want to open the dialog box, then we'll just revert this condition. From false it's going to be set to true. I hope that is very clear. Okay, so now we can just actually let's first create that dialog box, then we'll be able to add that in this file. Okay, so I'm just going to save this file for now. The next thing that we are going to do is we'll be navigating inside the sections folder. Okay, then inside this main folder we'll create another file. So I'm going to just call it friends.js. Okay, so I'm just going to call it friends.js. So the first thing that we'll do here is just create a react functional component. Okay, so that will be like this. Then I'll just destructure the props that we'll be getting here. Okay, so we'll pass these two props, open and handle close. Okay, So I have already destructured that here in advance. After that we'll be also implementing tabs here. Okay, so for that we'll actually manage this local state value and set value. Let me just write it. Okay, then you will understand why we are doing this. Here I'll just write or initialize the state with 0. Okay, let me also get this user state from React library. Okay, I'll also create a handle. Let's actually create just the body for this handle change function. Okay, I'll just write the logic here after we implement tabs. So here we'll be getting some form of arguments. Okay, and we'll just use them to do some logic here. Okay, now the first thing that I would like to do here is to basically add a dialog box here. Okay, like we discussed just now. So this dialog is obviously going to come from material UI. Okay, let's now actually start adding some props here. Okay, so the first one is going to be full width. Okay, then we're also going to provide this max width, and this is going to be extra small. Okay, then in order to manage its opening and closing state, we'll have to pass this open prop. Okay, this is going to be a boolean value, and we'll also pass this keep mounted. Okay, you can just read more about it on MUI documentation, since we are doing this for lots of time. That is why I'm not going to discuss everything here. You can just watch the previous videos where I have discussed each and every props that we are passing it. So for this on close handler, we'll be just using this handle close function that we created, and then for the styling part, we'll be providing it with padding 4 from all sides. Okay, so that is it. That is the bare minimum props that we need to pass here. Then the next thing is just, and let me just actually start by implementing tabs here. Okay, so for that, first of all, in order to group several tabs, we'll be using a stack. Okay, so here we have this stack component. It is going to come from material UI. Okay, so let's actually get that, and I'll be providing this padding of 2 from everywhere. Then let's actually add a little bit of styling here. So I'll just make sure that it's taking 100% of the width that is available to it. Okay, its children are taking 100% of the space. Then we'll be able to use this tabs component here. It is again going to come from material UI. Then here we can just pass this value prop. Okay, and now you can actually link it up. Okay, by we created this value and set value and handle change. So we'll be basically maintaining what tab is selected at the present. Okay, so there will be 3 tabs: explore, friends, and the request tab. Okay, so the value can be either 0, 1, or 2 at a time. So this is going to come from the state that we are managing in this component. Here we'll also need this on change handler. So here we'll create this. We have already created handle change, so let's actually pass that here. Okay, we'll be writing some logic over there. Also, we want all of our tabs to be centered. Okay, like if there is a space available, okay, then all of the tabs should be present at the center with some spacing between them. You can read more about this prop on material UI documentation. Okay, then in order to render individual tabs, we just have to write this. Okay, use this tab component again from material UI. Okay, so you can import it from @MUI/material. Then we just need to pass this prop label. Okay, this will be displayed on our UI, so you can write whatever you want to display to the user. So there will be simply 3 tabs. Okay, I'm just going to update their level, and let's actually see on our screen what we get. Okay, after making just a few more changes. So here I'll just update it to request like this. Okay, now we haven't actually added any dialog content here, but for now this is just going to work for us. Let me actually also do this handle change event. Okay, let me complete this handler function. So here in the first place we will be getting event, and as a second argument we'll be getting the new value after a tab is clicked. So we can just do this. We just need to update the value of this value state that we are maintaining here. So I'm just going to call this set value and pass the new value here like this. I hope this makes sense to you. Okay, then we'll be actually coming back here and adding dialog content. Okay, so I'll just leave a comment here to add dialog content. Now I'm just going to use this friends dialog inside this chat.js. Okay, so the first thing that I would like to do here inside this component is to wrap this JSX inside React fragment. Okay, so I'll just cut that from here and I'll add that at the bottom. Okay, now here we'll be basically rendering that dialog box conditionally, and that condition is going to depend upon the value of this open dialog. Only if it's true, then only we are going to render that dialog box, otherwise we are going to just omit that. Okay, so here I'll just write if the value of open dialog is true. Okay, then only we are going to render this component which is called friends. Okay, I have auto imported that. Here, as you have already seen, we are going to pass this open and handle close prop. Okay, so open and handle close. So the value for this open is going to be open dialog. Okay, and for this handle close, it's going to be handle close dialog. We have just created this few minutes ago. Okay, so that's it. Now let's actually see what changes we have made on our UI. So if you visit your app, okay, and click on this tab or this icon button, then you can see we have this nice little dialog box with three tabs which are actually centered. Okay, and we are able to basically switch between these. Okay, so we have done this bare minimum setup. Now we just need to render each of these lists. Okay, and for that we'll also be making some API calls, so let's do that stuff. Okay, so back to this React project, I'm just going to format my files. Okay, then here let's actually start with this dialog content. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do here is I'm just going to implement this dialog content component here. This will be used to wrap all of the content that will be facing over here. Again, please remember this dialog content component is also going to come from material UI. Next thing, we have to basically use this stack component. Okay, since we are going to again add multiple things here, so I've used this stack component for that purpose. Then I'll also make sure that it's again going to take 100% of the height that is available to it. Okay, so that is why I'm going to provide this CSS. Okay, or you can say CSS property. Okay, height 100%. Then inside this I will be adding another stack. Okay, so this stack is actually going to take this property spacing, and the value for this is going to be, let's actually set it to 2.5. Okay, so you can just multiply 2.5 by it and you will get the spacing that we are providing in pixels, right? Here I need to basically render multiple components based on what is the value of this value. Okay, that means it can be 0, 1 or 2. Based on that we'll be rendering different types of component here. So in order to basically write switch statement here, we'll have to create a if. If means immediately invoked function expression. So let's create one. Okay, so first of all we have to write the syntax. Okay, then we also need to call it immediately. So here what you are seeing, this is the syntax for writing an AP. Okay, you can basically read more about it on the internet. Just search for it or ask ChatGPT. Okay, here I'll be basically using this switch statement. Okay, we'll be using the value that we are storing in our local state as key inside this switch. Okay, and then for the cases there will be just case 0, case 1 and case 2 like we discussed right now. So I'm just going to create that case 0, case 1 and case 2 like this. Then we'll be returning some JSX or some component from here. Let me also actually write some comment here. So in case 0 we are going to display all users. Okay, then in case 2 we are going to display friends. So I'll write display all friends. Similarly in case number 2 we'll be displaying all friend requests. Okay, so I'll write display all friend requests. Then we'll have to create list for each of these cases. So I'm going to just create that in the same file at the top. Okay, so the first list that we'll be creating is users list. Okay, this will be for the first case, or case with the value of 0. Okay, so I have created this React component. Then I'm just going to return some JSX from here. So let's actually do that. I'll be first of all using this React fragment inside it. Then, so since we don't have any list here, so we'll have to first of all create that. So I'm just going to save this file here for now. Okay, then we'll be moving inside our Redux folder. Okay, then you have to open up this slices folder and go inside this app.js. So the first thing that we'll be doing here is to add few additional properties here inside this initial state. Okay, so I'll be adding users. Okay, this is going to contain the list of all the users that we can send friend request to. Then similarly, we'll also have this list of friends. Okay, and a list for friend requests. So I hope there is no doubt in this. Okay, if you want, I have already uploaded the code. Okay, the repo is updated, you can just refer back to that. Okay, now after that we'll just create reducers inside this slice. Okay, so I'll just create one for each of these three fields that we just added. Okay, so the first one will be update users. Here we'll just get the state and action argument as always. Okay, and then we can just update the users like this: state dot users is equal to the users that we'll be getting from the payload. That means action dot payload dot users. Okay, and similarly we can just duplicate it and update the values here. Okay, so I have just duplicated it 2 times. Okay, you can also do that, like just select the code that you want to duplicate and press Ctrl D. Okay, and also the down arrow or up arrow based on if you want to copy it on the upper side or on the lower side. If you are working on a Windows machine, then you can use control instead of command. I hope that is clear. So let's actually continue with that. So this will be update friends, and here in place of users it is going to be friends. Okay, here also we'll just change it to friends. Now the next one is going to be update friend requests, like this. Okay, let's actually implement that here. So this will be state dot friend request is equal to action dot payload dot. Here we can just use request. Okay, we'll just pass the array with this property request. Okay, so now we'll also need to create a thunk action for fetching all of these three fields. Okay, since we have made different API call for each of them. Okay, so that is why we'll be implementing that those here separately. Okay, so as you can see, we have already done this before. Okay, we have created many thunk actions where we are basically calling our API. So I'll just do it quickly. So the first one will be fetch users. Okay, so I'm just going to create this. Okay, now here inside this we can just return an async function, since we are going to make an API call. Okay, and we'll be getting this dispatch and get state as usual inside this arguments. And then we can just start making our API call using the Axios package that we have already installed and configured. Okay, in our previous videos. So since this is going to be a get request, so that is why I'm using this get method here. Let's actually provide the path, and that is going to be user slash get all, or let me actually cross check that. Okay, what route we have set it up. So you can just go inside this user.js inside routes folder. Okay, you can see the first endpoint that we want to use is get users. So I'll just update it to get users, and I'll make sure there is only one slash. Okay, then since this is going to be a protected request, okay, we are using this protect middleware, as you can see, which is going to require token. So that is why we'll also have to pass headers. Okay, and inside headers we'll be setting up authorization. So let's actually see how we can do that. So I'll just add this headers property. The first one that we are always sending is content type. Okay, and this is going to be as usual application slash JSON. Then the next thing is going to be authorization. Okay, let me actually see if we have used this before. No. So here we can just try it. Authorization, please make sure that you do not make any spelling mistake here. Okay, otherwise this is not going to be successful. Okay, then here we'll have to use this bearer token. Okay, since we are using this logic on our backend. If you open up this protect middleware and click on go to definition, then you can see we are actually accessing this authorization header. Okay, and then we are checking if the token starts with this bearer or not. Okay, so that is why each and every step you will have to follow as it is. Okay, then here in order to get the token from our state, we can just use this get state. So get state, just call it. Okay, then access this auth slice, and inside that you have this property token. So that's it. Okay, now we'll be able to make a successful API call, and we'll be able to fetch the list of these users. Then the question is how we are going to handle the response and error. So for that we can just make use of this then and catch block. Okay, so I'll be writing then. Okay, then we'll be having this response here. For now I'm just going to console log that response. Okay, and then in the next case we'll have error, so this will be catch block. Okay, so again here we'll be passing a callback, and I'll just log this console, and I'll just log this error to the console. Okay, like this. Then here we'll also dispatch, okay, this reducer that we just created here. As you can see, update users, so we'll be calling that here. So that is why I'm writing dispatch, and then in order to access that we'll have to write slice dot actions dot. Okay, then as you can see, update users, this last one. Okay, here as you can see, inside the payload that we are going to pass, we are going to need this users property. So that is why I'm going to just do that here. I'll just write this users property, and the value for that is going to be derived from this response object. So I'll just write response dot data dot data. Okay, and since I know this might be boring for some of you, okay, but we have to actually do this. Okay, so that is why I'm just going to basically copy and paste it, okay, two more times, and I'll just modify these values here. Okay, so instead of fetch users, the next call is going to be fetch friends. Okay, then here we'll also have to update this endpoint, and if you go back to your server.js, okay, or basically your backend, then you can see the next endpoint we have is get friends for fetching the list of friends. So I'll just update it to get friends. These headers are going to remain exactly same. Okay, we just need to make some changes here when we are dispatching. Okay, so instead of this update users, it is going to be update friends. Okay, then in place of this users property, we'll have to basically update it. So as you can see, we are going to need this friends property from our payload, so that is why I'm going to just update that here. So it will be updated to friends, right? Similarly we can update this as well. So this will be fetch friend request. Okay, let me write that properly, fetch friend request. Then we'll have to again update this endpoint. Let me just again check. Yeah, so on our backend we have this route get friend request. Okay, so I'll just update that here. Similarly this part is going to remain exactly same. Okay, then here again we'll need to make some changes. So instead of update users, this is going to update friend request. Okay, and here if you remember correctly, this is going to be request. Okay, let's actually also cross verify that here. Yeah, so we are going to need this request property and not request. Okay, so let me make sure that I'm writing it correctly. Yeah, so we are done with this. Okay, we have introduced these properties here. Now we will be able to use these. Okay, we'll be able to fetch the data from our API, then we'll be able to map over it. Okay, and render a list of all these users. So again back to this friends. Okay, let's actually complete this. Okay, so inside this users list, since we want to fetch the list of users as soon as this component is rendered, so that is why we are going to make an API call here. Okay, so For that we'll have to dispatch some kind of action. Okay, so that is why I'm going to require this use dispatch first of all from React Redux library. So now we have this dispatch property. Okay, we can just make use of use effect. Okay, so that we are only calling our API to request data, okay, for our users only when this component is rendered, like this. Okay, so here we can just use this dispatch that we just created and pass fetch users. Okay, so you can see it is going to be auto imported from our redux slash slices slash app. Okay, here fetch users. Then after we have this, we are also going to need that list of users, so we can just grab that like this. Const users is equal to, then we can make use of this use selector hook from React Redux again. Here we can just pass a callback, so we'll be getting our store as an argument here. Okay, then we can just write store dot app. Okay, and if you want you can also just rename it to state instead of a store. So let me just do that because that sounds much better. So now this is done. Okay, we can just basically use this users list here for now. So what I'm going to do, I will just write users dot map. Okay, then for each element that we'll be getting, let's also actually get their index. Then we don't have any component to render for now, so that is why we are going to just pass this react fragment. Okay, and I'm also going to leave a comment here to do. Okay, so that we come back and fix. So I'm just leaving this comment to do. Okay, render the user component here. So I'm just going to now format this document. Then I'll be using this users list, okay, down here in our case 0. So I'll just write return and then this component. So I hope now the flow is clear. We are going to repeat that again for case 1 and 2. So let's actually do that quickly and then I'll just update the values accordingly. After this users list, the second list is going to be friends. So friends list. Okay, here I'll just update these values. Instead of fetch users, it will be fetch friends. Okay, like this. Then instead of this users, it's going to be again friends, like this. Here also we'll have to map over friends and I'll just write render friend component. Similarly for this next one. Okay, now similarly for this next one, we can just write friend request list. Okay, and then we can just update it to fetch friend request. Okay, then in place of this users, let's actually write this friend request. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'll just select this users and this one simultaneously. So I'm just going to select one and then press Control D or Command D. Okay, like this, and then I can just paste that. So I hope that is very clear. Here also I'm just going to update this comment. We'll be rendering friend request component. Okay, let's actually make use of these here in our switch cases. So again I'm just going to copy that line from above. Okay, then I'll just paste that here. Let me actually remove this break statement, because if we are returning from the switch case, then that means the flow will be exited from here. Okay, so here as you can see from the comment, it is going to be friends list. So here we are, and then in the second case it's going to be friend request list. Okay, like this. So now I'm just going to format this document and save it. So now if you go back to your app and if you see a blank screen, then that is because we have introduced some other property here again, okay, inside our Redux store. So I'll just again go ahead and inside this application tab, and then I have just cleared up the local storage. Okay, the next thing I'll do is just I'll empty the cache and hard reload. Okay, let's actually log in again. So I'm going to log in from my email ID. After our app is loaded, you can just open up this list, okay, and see. So currently you cannot see anything rendered here, and that is because we haven't rendered the actual component. Instead we have rendered react fragment. Okay, so that is why you are not able to see any list here, but we have already implemented the logic. So let's now actually continue from here in the next part where we'll build this component. Then the final thing is going to be just accepting the request. Okay, then we'll be able to focus on sending different kinds of messages. Okay, and that will be it for this chat part. Okay, we'll also implement these things like this tab here, this contact info. This is going to be fully functional. Okay, these actions on messages are also going to be working. Okay, we'll be able to switch between different chats, and we'll also be able to get this online and offline status along with this number of unread messages and all these things. Okay, so I hope you are excited about that part. So that will be covered in the next two parts. Okay, or I'll just try to basically finish this ASAP. So please make sure to like this video and also comment. Okay, I'll see you in the next one. And the last thing, if you haven't joined our Discord server yet, then please make sure to join that. Okay, it is going to take only 2 minutes of your time. That's it. Thank you for watching this video. I'll see you in the next one.